Media Boutique.
Here with, at very long last, perhaps even too late, Cold Garden Brewery. Now, two reasons for that. One, I was very late in discovering Cold Garden. Now, we found out about these folks in two ways. One, we were looking for new porters for the store, so we just went and looked for anything in a porter whatsoever. Now, we knew about Cold Garden. They've been around since 2017. We were aware that they existed, but we didn't know just how good this porter would be until we brought it in 2-3 weeks ago. Now, I went up to Calgary for 4 days right around my birthday, and I went to Annex and Establishment, and it was great. I tried some new breweries like Cold Garden, which was absolutely fantastic. Can't recommend their tap room enough. Thoroughly enjoyed Old Beautiful. Went to Martel Loop Brewing. The less said about that, the better. But Cold Garden was absolutely fantastic. We were shocked by their porter. I thoroughly loved the tap room. And then, surprise of all surprises, they actually have 4 beers in Connect. You know, it's been 5 years since they opened. It finally happened. 4 beers. We can do a tasting. So we jumped on this the second that we could actually do one. And, oh, folks, you're in for a treat tonight. This is going to be really, really fun. Our tasting order tonight is the East Calgary Lager, and then the Cakeface Marzen, then the Vanilla Cappuccino Porter, and we will finish with the IPA. I know I usually do IPAs before dark beers, but these two both have vanilla, and the IPA being here just throws everything off. So we're going to finish with the IPA tonight. Now, like I said, 2017 founding, and they have their East Calgary Lager. Now, you'd be forgiven for thinking that this beer is going to be a German Hell or something like a Pilsner or even just like a North American craft lager, however we nebulously define that. But no, they went with a Vienna style lager here, and I really like this choice. Now, I was trying to think, out of all the breweries that we deal with regularly, I mean, most of them have a lager. Blind Man has their Five of Diamonds Pills. Annex has their Idle Hands Pills. Cabin has Luminosity, also a Pills. You might be noticing a certain trend here. 88 has their Monster Truck Light Pills. I'm trying to think of another brewery in Alberta, period, that has anything other than a Pills or, in the case of SYC, who does have their Pontificato Pills, they also have their Clock Out North American Lager. Nobody has a year-round lager. I think this might be the only, or yeah, a year-round Vienna-style lager. I think this might be absolutely unique. And that's a shame because this is a delight. Oh, yes. It's cereal, it's malty, but beyond the malt. Also, you can tell this is going to be a good thing because you can't see it, but everyone here is just getting in on it. Ryan's in, Aaron's in, Sky's not, but you know.
That's nice.
Isn't that nice? Like, it's not just the cereal grain, there's some real fruit here. Like, I get red berries, I get apples, I get licorice, I get something, red licorice, not black. I get a certain like tart note in the fruit that's almost like strawberry rhubarb. It's really, really neat. And that's all coming, for the most part, A, from a really clever grain build, but B, from the yeast strain they've chosen here. This is almost overnight one of my 5 favorite lagers that we get. And that's high praise, especially considering that Establishment, I believe it was Establishment, and Blind Man just did a collab for their new Dortmunder, which is rockstar good. I think I like this even better. I get apples, but for me the shocker is just how much red fruit I get off of this. And I've had Vienna Lager before that drinks like this, but not very often, and not in such an unassuming can. Like this to me, if I'd walked into, you know, just your average liquor store, or even coming in here and seen East Calgary Lager on the shelf, I'd have just walked by because I'd have assumed that, like everyone else, it's just gonna be either a Pils or kind of a traditional style like North American lager. I don't expect their like bone standard lager to be a Vienna, and this is a delight. So this is fun. and Craig's exploded. Well, that's interesting. Mine was fine. I'm curious now why his exploded and mine didn't. Because if it was over carb, these are all from the same flat. There should have been a persistent issue. Interesting. Has anyone else's can exploded? Because I'll be curious to find out. That's not as sweet as I would expect. Now, let's be very clear. This is not a dry beer. This does not finish particularly dry. I don't get a huge hop note on this. I think there's, well, there has to be some. Otherwise, the beer would be unbearably sweet. But again, it's round, it's grainy, it's cereal, it's rich. It's quite long lasting, and it finishes with a real like rye bread, spelt sourdough sort of finish on it too. That's really interesting. There's a lot more here than meets the eye, and I'm very pleased with this. So, spoiler warning, I opened these about 10 minutes before they turned the camera on, and I was like, yep, the IPA is what I expect. The porter I'd had before, the Cakeface, we'll get to Cakeface. The lager was the shocker for me. I really was not expecting this much out of this beer, and it really blew me away. So this is maybe not my favorite thing on the table, but certainly the biggest surprise. And we'll get to what my favorite thing is. Worth cleaning it off the floor. All right, well, fair enough. Apologies to Craig. I will replace your can. We have some extras, so. You know, the more I go back to that, the more I do find the bitterness is there. I went looking for it on this sip specifically, and there is a real noble hop presence right at the very first sip, and that's what keeps this refreshing. So this is very well balanced.
I understand the apple comment.
Do you get the red fruit, though? Do you get the berries, particularly strawberry, maybe cherry? That would be a no.
I'd have to think harder.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what? Vienna Lager, out of Calgary. Brewery we haven't really talked about. Great start. We are off and running. Very strong start. And now we get into Cakeface. Now, please don't misunderstand that I dislike Cakeface or anything. It's a Marzen, so it's probably a very, very similar grain bill to the East Calgary Lager. In their explanation, they said this is a Marzen that was once a lager, certainly a riddle. I'm guessing that maybe this began as a batch of the East Calgary Lager that they added ale yeast to by mistake, and after that they added the vanilla beans too. Now, as the name would imply, it kind of comes off like vanilla birthday cake. Now, with all the things, we've certainly had beers that have tried to come off like dessert or cake-like in the past to, let's say, mixed results. I think that's very charitable. This, I don't think, is a mixed result. In all defiance of things I usually like, considering I've hated pretty much every dessert-style beer we've ever put on, I kind of dig this. And I'm surprised by that. Now, if I were to offer criticism, I will offer two. One, especially compared to how aromatic the lager is in the nose, I think the vanilla on this makes it not smell like a whole lot. I get the vanilla. I don't really get the cereal grain underneath. I think in the nose, at least, the vanilla kind of overruns it. My second complaint is a very specific one. As you all know, I put my beer on these half flats for the sake of our rollers. And this is a complaint not just of Cakeface, but all their beers. Why do breweries insist on putting the name of the damn beer at the bottom of the can where no one can see it? I will at some point next year be replacing this system. I do want to replace all of our rollers with clear plastic, and we'll just push them down rather than relying on the rolling. I just have to find someone to sell those rollers to because they are really expensive. We don't have exactly a huge fridge, but there's about $4,900 worth of rollers, which I can't just put in the warehouse and forget about. I need to at least resell to someone. But yes, so I get the vanilla, I get the spice, I don't get a lot of the rest of it. But in the mouth, there are about 100,000 ways that this could come off artificial or fake tasting or like preservatives or God help us, like all the things. Or even like that Sparrowhawk, which was just Mill Street Vanilla Porter, but brewed in Alberta. This manages to come off, and I think it's because they're using actual vanilla beans. This comes off not tasting artificial and is, again, we've been doing these for almost 3 years now. This is maybe my favorite dessert style, like weird ingredient beer we've had so far. The only other thing I'd really put in this category, and it's a very different beer, are some of the Origin of Darkness beers. Hilariously, also by Collective Arts, I believe. But yeah, this is a surprise for me. I don't love how it smells, but when I get it in the mouth, if they're going for that like white cake, vanilla birthday cake aroma and flavor, at least the flavor, this is right on what I want. And it comes through better than most. And I think that's because, again, assuming this or something very similar to this is the base recipe, I think it's because the base ingredients are so well done.
Oh, wow. There you go.
Yeah, even Sky likes it. Sky doesn't like anything. Red vines. Interesting. Yeah, Craig, I also kind of went into this thinking I wasn't going to be really in love with it. I'll be honest. We said, oh, we're going to do a cold garden tasting with the IPA and the porter and the lager. And it was like, is anything else available that's not Cakeface? Because I just know it's going to be a vanilla cake beer and I don't want it. You know what? I should hate this. Every fiber of my being wants to hate this. I really like this. It's fun. It's well done. It doesn't taste like Betty Crocker's vanilla frosting. It doesn't taste full of preservatives. It's, God damn it, it's really good. And I hate that. It makes me angry that it's this good.
Buttery, like that butter icing smoothness too, like a delicious, like rich kind of like butter icing.
Oh, you're getting like a buttercream thing out of it.
Yes.
Ooh.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's right on the top, isn't it? Like almost on the roof of your mouth.
Yeah, it's back there.
But not in a gross, like diacetyl way. Eric said, and Eric brings up an interesting point. One, that it's well made for something he expected to be a clown car. Flavors, fair enough. So did I. He's impressed, but he's glad he doesn't have to finish a pint of it. And I'm quite unusually going to disagree with Eric on this, because that's almost always the thing I would say about a beer like this. I think I say it about any beer with a big, strong ingredient. Where, yeah, it's fun because I have this much and I'm sharing it with Aaron and Sky and the Eric Dick colorimeter and Ryan. Probably should have put Ryan ahead of the colorimeter, but you know, here we are. But yeah, I actually think I could do a pint of this, and I actually think I could do a couple of pints of this. I would also say that this would be an absolutely fantastic base if they had something like a berry sour on tap and do 2/3 of a pint of this and top it off. You'd almost get like a strawberry shortcake effect. And I would probably hate that in most beer, but I think this would really, really work. Cold Garden, if you're not doing that and you're watching, which you almost certainly aren't, you should do that if you aren't already, because that sounds delicious.
Beer float.
I like beer cocktails that are done with just draft. I mean, even something as simple as a Crown Float or a Black and Tan. I like that sort of thing. I think this with a little splash of like raspberry or blackberry or cherry sour would be absolutely fantastic. And Tyler has definitely had many pints of this in one night. And I can see why. It's maybe the only beer that uses vanilla in this way. I won't say the only beer that uses vanilla, because Jamrock uses vanilla, and I have definitely gotten utterly, utterly destroyed on Jamrock in the past in one sitting. I could do this. I really could do this. You know what? That's really damn nice. A white background on the colorimeter. Yes. You are really pleased about it. Longwood, whose beers we are skewering, probably less happy about it. I also like that these guys have been around. They've been around since 2017, so only 5 years. I think that 5 years is long enough that it's nostalgic for people. And I will also highly recommend their tap room again, I like lots of tap rooms. For anybody who went on the beer trip with us, I mean, Annex is really cool. You've got Little Empire in there. You've got the fooders right in the tasting room. It's a really neat space. They've got the giant patio. It's great. Establishments is really cool. You almost feel like you're sitting in the brewery, especially if you're at the back half of the tasting room. 88's tasting room is second to none because it's so wildly 80s themed, and they have the NES that we kind of got working, and they have all the other things. They have great pizza. Cabins, we did not quite get that working. Cabins tasting room is really cool, but Cold Gardens is just so comfortable and so not pretentious, and you just walk in and you feel very at ease. I'd almost call it rumpus room chic. It's very relaxing and very calm and very eclectic, and I quite like their space. So it was a real discovery for me visiting them, tasting this beer. I feel like I'm really, really late to the party here, and I feel bad. But it's also really nice for me to walk into something like this cold and be like, what? This exists? It's wonderful. Oh, sorry, I just have more Cakeface to get through before we can move on to the porter here. I poured myself a little too much. And I will say, you can't just put this back or the vanilla becomes a little overwhelming. Like, this is something I'd want to sit and sip on for a while. This does take a minute. Yeah, I think everybody here is very much on the same page where Cold Garden rules as a place to visit. Anytime you two laugh, I assume you've put like flames behind me or something.
Done anything nefarious.
Uh-huh.
It all just happens naturally.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, so let's move on to the all-nighter vanilla cappuccino porter, which we actually had in our computer for a suspiciously long time as the Van Cap porter, which I thought was actually a really cool name, but no, it's the vanilla cappuccino porter, which is called all-nighter. Okay, for anyone who had that Sparrowhawk vanilla porter, was that 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, something like that. This is how you do a vanilla porter, everyone. Pay attention. Like, take notes. This is what I want in a vanilla porter. Because that Sparrowhawk tasted like Mill Street and nothing but Mill Street, which, let's be very clear, that's not a compliment. This rules. Like, again, I don't know if I could drink a vanilla beer all night. I could have this all night. Well, I couldn't because of the caffeine would keep me up, because it does have coffee in it. Right? Even Sky's like, damn.
Damn, bro.
You can finish it, Sky. Go for it. No one's going to judge you. I'm finishing this. And yeah, like, this is absolutely fantastic. Like, this is exactly what I want in a dessert-style porter or stout. And shameless plug, this is featured somewhere in our Christmas Advent calendar, which we did once again this year. So you may remember 3 years ago, we were having a heck of a time getting Advent calendars at all. The craft beer Advent calendar was kind of expensive or sold out. Phillips had kind of gone away from doing their snow case. The Red Racer one was kind of hard to get. So we said, you know what? To heck with it. We are going to make our own. And I had no idea what an absolutely massive undertaking that was going to be. As it turns out, it's a gigantic undertaking, and then we went and added even more steps, because there's one thing about our Advent calendar I've never liked. I liked the packaging, I liked the idea, I liked that we got to pick beers from our friends and breweries you hadn't seen before, and beers that were exclusive to calendars, and all this other stuff. I liked finding surprises and building a story by selecting 24 different beers that really, to me, told the story of the year. But the problem was, once you took one can out, you could bloody see what all the other cans in the case were. It wasn't really a surprise. You kind of knew what you were getting. As much as the can tops were different, there wasn't any surprise. Well, there was a solution to that, and that solution is the reason I have no skin on the back of my pinky finger. That solution was hand wrapping in wrapping paper 1,152 goddamn tall cans of beer. But God help us, we did that. Every single calendar, you can't tell what it is because it's wrapped in wrapping paper. And that's true for all 48 of our calendars. 48 by 24 cans is 1,152. This was not from wrapping paper, by the way. This was from taking these can tops and cutting off all of the bits so that it's just the ring. But yes, our calendars now are a little different than we've had in past years. There is not always a topper. You can get the topper ones or without. But yes, now it is a mystery. Now you genuinely can't tell unless you are like a shitty 12-year-old kid and you peel back the wrapping paper under the tree on Christmas morning. You genuinely will be surprised every time. So that's the new format for our Advent calendars because it always bugged me that you kind of could tell what the others were. Not anymore. I'm really, really happy with them this year. And we are all really, really good at wrapping cans now. And the very specific twist that you have to do to get the edge of the paper to slide under the cap. That's the real trick. But yes, 1,152 individually wrapped cans of beer. We are making 48 and absolutely no more than 48 calendars this year. Now, you're going to see probably next week, we have a ton of different calendars. I think we have 8 or 9 different calendars this year in beer, whiskey, wine. We have lots of options, but this is ours this year. I'm really proud of it. I think there's some really, really fun stuff in here. I think, this is round 2. I think there are 3 year-round beers, and the other 21 are either one-off seasonals, exclusive to the calendar, or both. So it's a really good lineup this year. I'm really proud of it. So we did not bother wrapping the bottoms. No, they all look the same on the bottom. Plus, you want to see the expiration date. So, you know, there's that too. Back to this porter, because while that was a really nice shameless plug, I want to talk more about this. Now, I don't want to keep kicking a dead horse. Poor Sparrowhawk. Let's just say Mill Street. Everybody knows Mill Street Vanilla Porter. Why? Because the Owl had it on tap for like 10 years. We all know that beer. We've all had that beer. And it was fine. It was kind of thin. The vanilla flavor tasted artificial. It didn't have a lot going on. This is deep. It's rich. It tastes a heck of a lot bigger than 5.8% alcohol. I've had imperial stouts, bad imperial stouts, looking at you, Samuel Smith, that don't have this much presence in the mouth. It's rich and it's luxurious and it feels lovely. This is about as well as I've seen this style of kind of dessert stout done, and I'm really into it. Like, we're 3 beers deep, and this is kind of going like the dark lager tasting where we refused to rank them because they were all so good. We are going to rank this, but man, am I going to struggle with that. Can you still get this porter? Yes, it is on our shelves now. This was actually the very first beer from Cold Garden we carried. You know, I don't want to give any spoilers away about me liking all these beers, but we're going to carry the whole range starting like next week. So yes, you absolutely can still get this porter. Ericast, here's a fun one. How are some exclusive to the calendar? And this one's really, really fun. Born Brewing out of Calgary, ex-Born, Colorado. They knew a lot of stores were doing their own in-house calendars. So they decided they were going to do 3 beers just for retailers who are doing their own calendars. So they are going to be released to the general public sometime in January. But at least for now, they only sold it to stores that were making their own calendars. So they are genuine calendar exclusives only for retailers doing their own calendars. I think that's the coolest thing ever. So yes, there are 3 beers in here. You know, yes, they're all from Born, that are just for this, which I think is really, really fun. The other things are exclusive to the calendar is they are things that I have not brought in previously and am deliberately choosing not to bring in until after the calendars are released. So there's 2 things in here I'm not going to bring in until about the 15th of December. I will be bringing into the store. But at least for this, they're just for the calendar. I don't want them to be just regularly on the shelves. I want to build a little bit of, I can't get this anywhere else into the calendar. Not because it's going to make the calendar sell better. These are going to sell out anyway. It's more because it's fun that way. And I like the little bit of exclusivity. Just like I don't need to hand wrap 1,152 individual cans of beer. It's just more fun and it's better this way. It's terrible for the environment, mind, but it is more fun. I didn't like Smith Stout. I like Smith Stout fine. It was just the first one that kind of came to mind in the sense that it's not a lot of people expect an Imperial Stout. It tends to come off a little thin. It tends to come off a little bit strong and almost sharp boozy. It's a perfectly fine, very old-fashioned Imperial Stout, but it's not what I want in an Imperial Stout anymore. And yes, please, do save the tops, Megan, because we absolutely can reuse them. As much as I enjoy not having skin on my fingers, I prefer having skin on my fingers. Oh, and thank you, Corey. That's very nice. I'm really, really happy with them. Not happy with how much time they take, but I'm very happy with them in general. Plus, and this is just a very personal thing, I like the idea of an advent calendar because I can remember like when I was growing up, my parents kept like the they were like basic shitty chocolate ones they probably got for $1.99, but they were hung up on the wall at Christmas, and like there's a whole tradition of my mom taking the calendars down from the wall because otherwise my brother and I would get into them. And like parceling out the chocolate every day. I like that this way. It's like opening a present every day. So you can take your can, or maybe 2-3 days worth of cans out, put them in the fridge. You've no idea what they are, and it genuinely surprises you. Like you come home from work, you're tired, you change into your like at home clothes because I just wear pajamas at home, and you tear into it, and you have no idea what's inside. And I love that. I think that's so fun. It's so much more fun than what we had before, which I was very proud of. I loved what was inside it. I liked that we hand built our own. I thought it was really cool, but I always really hated you could tell what was inside. And this way you can't, and I'm really, really in love with the idea. So yeah, I'm happy with this. We are never doing more than 48 a month, ever. We're never going to go back to, last year we sold 72 calendars. We did really well with them. I'm never doing 72 this way because it's 576 individual can wraps per round, and I'm not doing that. Okay, let's jump into our last beer. And we're doing the IPA at the end because I kind of needed the porter to follow the Cakeface. Let's jump in here with the IPA. Now, pleasingly, this is a West Coast IPA, which is quite unusual. I think at this point for 95% of breweries, their core IPA is a hazy, and for very understandable reasons. I don't see much haze here. I see a little bit of like lupulin oil, like I see a little bit of oiliness here, but I don't see any haze, and I'm very grateful for that. Aaron, I deliberately do wait until you're like zooming in the camera to put it down. It's purely out of spite and love. The love spite. So this must be the IPA, West Coast IPA by Cold Garden, which they describe and is depicted on the can, running through a Pacific Northwest hop field naked, which I don't know, I've never done that. Yeah, bucket list thing. But I really like this style of IPA. I think I'm quite famous for loving West Coast IPAs, so I expect that this is going to be very, very good. And again, Craig. Oh wow, the explosions continue. Okay. And it exploded all over the dog. Oh no, Chris's poor dog. The dog has been apparently coated in IPA. This is a real problem. Well, that is a shame because it's an excellent IPA. Let's again cover West Coast versus East Coast or hazy IPAs. West Coast IPAs are the older style. They generally started out quite a bit darker, more kind of this color. These are beers like Hophead, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, or Torpedo Double IPA. They tend to be very coppery in color. They tend to be a real balance of bitterness and sweetness. as we kind of came into the early 2000s, breweries like Russian River Brewing Company, Lagunitas, Bear Republic, all just kind of north of San Francisco, started coming up with this new West Coast IPA, which was much paler. It was very, very clean, and it was just a hop showcase. The malt profile was kind of brought down. It was still there to provide balance, but it was really about just showing off the hops. And this very much is a West Coast IPA in the old school. See, I'm kind of glad that mine worked out, but yeah, it doesn't sound like this worked out for everybody. I'm so sorry, folks. I'll reach out to Cold Garden about that. And yes, the IPA looks very pretty next to the porter. I can't really see it from my angle, but I think it looks really nice. Exploded. Yes, it's a tragedy. Ooh. You know what? I don't taste West Coast IPAs very often anymore, which is a shame. But this is really nice. It's giving me that orange rind marmalade thing that I really like from West Coast IPAs. I'm getting a little bit of that pine resin, getting a little bit of that cedar chip. It's a little tiny bit dank and kind of cannabis-like, which is appropriate. That's lovely. You know what? I don't think if we showed this in a lineup of like the showiest IPAs of the year, if we'd put that into the lineup with 88 Hi-Fi and the Beer Brewing Live, Laugh, Love and whatever else we did that week, we did Hello Euphoria and something else. I don't know if you'd show that well in that lineup, but I don't always need a big, crazy, hyper showy, phantasm, cryo, fresh hopped IPA. Sometimes I just want an IPA. And this one really ticks all the boxes for like a classic West Coast IPA that I just come back to over and over and over again. This is really well done. I assume that Cold Garden does some like wilder, crazier seasonal IPAs. For like a house IPA, that's pretty strong. I do think, however, in my opinion, it's the weakest beer on the table, which I think is the very first time I've ever picked the IPA as the weakest beer on the table. I think the porter wins quite comfortably. Like, that's just spectacular. I could drink that anytime. The lager for me is coming in as a strong number 2. Cakeface 3, and I kind of debated putting these two as a tie, but it's the nose for me with the Cakeface. I love how much I like it more than I expected to like it, but the lager is just so perfectly spot on for a Vienna lager that has to win. I'd even kind of go back and forth here for first place. The IPA is a very good IPA. It's right in the style I like IPA, but it's a tough crowd and something has to come forth. That's a really nice West Coast IPA. Thoroughly enjoy it. Would buy it. The rest of the lineup's just stronger. Craig coming in with 3-1-4-2. Oh, Craig, have a sense of humor. The Cakeface is fun. I know I had it 3, but still. But yeah, otherwise, other than these two being the same, it's you and I are the same. And yes, the can art is really fantastic. Again, other than the fact that if you put them on beer flats, it cuts off the bottom of the can. That parts are not so great, but otherwise, I really do quite like the can art, especially on the Cakeface. That's quite good.
Yep, horrendous.
Well, you know, that's just how I display them. It's not really their fault. Let's talk about what we have coming up next week. We've talked about everything bloody else. Yeah, we didn't do any promo for this. We are going to go back to Vancouver Island with Longwood Brewery, based in Nanaimo, founded in 2012. They actually came with a brewery flight, which features 4 of their beers, handpicked by them as their introduction to the market. So, okay, I won't argue with you. I mean, maybe Cold Garden would have wanted a different introduction here. If these happen to be the 4 things that were in stock on Connect, maybe they would have rather showed off other things. With something like this, the brewery's chosen. This is what we represent. This is our message to the world. And they've got a Dunkel, an IPA, a Russian Imperial Stout, and a Raspberry Ale. Thank you, Aaron. And yeah, I'm really excited to try this. It's a new brewery, and I know that these sometimes seem like a bit of a cop out that I'm just going with this, but I do these for a reason because when a brewery does a case like this and they spend all the money to do the packaging and everything else, they've sat down at some point and had a conversation and said, what four beers really represent our values? What speaks to us as a brewery? And if they haven't done that and they just picked four names out of a hat, that says even more about the brewery. But I like doing these because it really, you're taking what the brewery wants. I mean, maybe Cold Garden would have liked me to have done anything other than this porter. They'd have been wrong because it's fantastic. But maybe Cold Garden's message would have been, you know what, that porter's not really our brand. We want you to do another beer in this spot. And fair enough. This gives the brewery that agency to say, this is what we want people to taste. This is what we want people to try. And I like these packs for that reason, because it's the brewery getting to tell its own story, other than, you know, me talking over it and making fun of the beer sometimes. But yeah, I like these sorts of packs for this reason. So that's coming up next week. Typeface chaos. You're not wrong. The typeface is absolutely everywhere on these. Mark at 3214, so we are similar. Where's clock, Kent? Yeah, I know it's 36 minutes past 6. But I also really hoped to get a guest from Cold Garden for this, and I didn't get them, so that's all right. John has 3, 4, 1, and 2. John, not a fan of the lager and the Cakeface. That's interesting. He still wanted to pull the sheet of paper out. It was very dramatic. It was very nice.
Yeah, I was gonna try to be a magician.
All right, folks, I think we'll call it right there. Cold Garden, brewery that we are definitely getting to too late. The beers are fantastic right across the board. We will be having all of these on the shelf as soon as tomorrow, because we have a few packs that didn't sell. So we'll at least have a couple of 4 packs of these on the shelf. We already carry the porter. We will be carrying the whole range. And yeah, that's about all I have to say about that. We will see you next week for Longwood Brewing out of Nanaimo. And yeah, we'll call that a good Wednesday night. Have a wonderful rest of your night, folks. We'll see you in 7 days. Good night.